right now. It's Byron Stripling here, and this is Offstage Live. And we want to welcome you to today's show, which is incredibly excited. A couple housekeeping things before we get started. We first want to send out prayers, and we want to send out good thoughts, and whatever you send out to our executive director, Press Southworth, who's a little bit under the weather, but he's strong. Press has a Purple Heart. He's beat everything that's come his way. So I'm really not worried about him, but we just need to give him that extra boost. So if you could do that, that would be great. Like all arts organizations around the world, we've been deeply affected by the coronavirus crisis. And so I have a little request for you. Please go to jazzemergencyfund.com, jazzemergencyfund.com, and dig deep. I want you to go way down in there and make a donation to support our continuing efforts to uplift this community through great music. Many of you aren't aware of the great things that we do, not only with music and presenting concerts for you, but what we do educationally for you. And many kids tell us that the only opportunity that they have to experience jazz and even music in the public schools is the programs that we give to them. We have fourth graders that we give full assemblies for. We have programs where we go directly into the school. And that's thanks to the great Zach Compton, who sort of gets our jazz education things happening. So, well, please donate, because we want to keep the music playing. What we know is that with the legacy that Ray Eubanks left us over 40 some years ago, with legacy comes a great responsibility. And our responsibility is to use music to lift up everybody in Columbus. The other thing you could do is you can donate your tickets. We had to miss two concerts, our concert with the guest artist who you'll meet in a few moments, and also the great Ian Finkel. We couldn't have that concert, nor can we have the April concert, because the coronavirus thing will still be in effect. We can't, congregate. What we would love you to do is donate your tickets back to us, and that will absolutely help our survival during this period of time. So please call CAPA, the Columbus Association for Performing Arts, and they're at 614-469-0939. And that's the perfect way to help us. What we know is that the most powerful thing on earth is the human soul on fire, and jazz ignites that fire. And so we want you to help us keep igniting the fire of jazz. We want to give a thank you to a few friends that came through and helped us this week in an amazing way, and last week. And I only give their first names because I don't have permission to use their last names. But first person is Dennis. Dennis, thank you so much for what you've done in the past and continue to do. In our darkest hour, you made the sun come out. So thank you, Dennis. Also, Ann and Tom, always thank you to you forever. You've supported us from the very beginning. John and Patricia, you know that I love you from the depths of my heart. So a heartfelt thanks to you. Tom and Joan. I forgot to thank Tom and Joan last time. I love both of you guys. You're dear friends and have even traveled with us all the way to Colorado. And you are number one fans for us and support us in every way possible. Finally, the cutest lady in the world, Sandy. Sandy, if you're out there, we all love you. We thank you for what you've done for this organization, and particularly this last time that you helped us, and so many others. Also, finally, now we go to our word for the day. And what we know the word for the day is that every book is just a fingertip away. And so to me, books are superpowers. And so we always want you, and it's been encouraged by the people, the mental health professionals, that during this quarantine, if you can get off social media for just a little bit, just get off it a little bit and grab a book and let that book serve you. It's hard. Guy has spent a whole lifetime writing. By reading, you can turn decades into days. It is the ultimate superpower for you. It's called I Walked with Giants. Internet connection is unstable. There it is. I Walked with Giants. This is by the great Jimmy Heath. You got to get this book. It's really a history of jazz. Jimmy Heath was good friends with John Coltrane. They're both Philly guys, and he has great stories in here about Dizzy Gillespie, John Coltrane, and so many others I was lucky to play on albums that Jimmy Heath and Bill Cosby produced, and also just to tour with Jimmy Heath around the world. He was simply fantastic. My last book recommendation for you today goes with next week's guest artist. It's called What a Wonderful World, and it's a history of the late years of Louis Armstrong. It's by Ricky Riccardi, and ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, Ricky Riccardi will be with us next week, next Sunday at 6:30, and he will talk about everything Louis Armstrong. He is in charge of the Louis Armstrong archives at Queens College. I've been there, visited with him, worked with him. He let me play Louis Armstrong's instruments. I have pictures of myself playing that, but Ricky Riccardi is imbued with the power, the soul, and the spirit of Louis Armstrong. He often says, I'm here so I can defend Louis Armstrong against all the crazies out there. He knows everything Louis Armstrong. I want to introduce you to our guest artist. And he's a simply spectacular musician. He was supposed to be with us on our last concert, last month in March. But of course, we had to let that concert go. But Burt Bacharach has described him as a great writer and a terrific trumpet player. He's not only a trumpet player, he also plays the keyboards. He's a composer. He's a producer. He does everything. In 2017, he won the ITG First Prize Jazz Competition. In 2017, he also won the Carmine Caruso First Prize Jazz Competition. In 2014, as just a young man, he won the National Trumpet Competition, the jazz part there. He grew up in Portland, Oregon, and he now lives in New York City, but you've seen him playing at the Blue Note. You've seen him playing Monterey Jazz Festival in Switzerland. You've seen him playing at the, oh my goodness, in the Ukraine at that jazz festival, and also that great jazz club, the New Morning Club in Paris, one of the great jazz clubs of all time. He is simply spectacular. We will talk about his career, his life, and his influences. You're in for a treat. I want you to hear him first. If we could, if Alexa, if you're out there, could you play a little bit of Tony playing You Are My Sunshine? I can't hear it, Alexa. That's a tough one. We couldn't hear it. Can we try it again and see if we can hear it? We're going to try that again. Ladies and gentlemen, it don't get no better than that. Would you please welcome here Tony Glausi? How you doing, Tony?
I'm good. Thank you so much, Byron. Thanks for having me.
Look here, I can't help but smile when I hear that. It makes me dance. It's like my feet get happy when I hear you play that. And that recording is the first time I ever heard you. I didn't know who you were. Yes. No, I didn't know who you were. I didn't care who you were. But then as soon as I heard that trumpet, I said, oh, Lord, who is this? And you tore that up. Now, just a quick, I'm going to let you talk with Sebastian. This is my introduction. So I heard that and I said, well, who is this? This cat is hitting it. And then that recording was on Facebook for about 6 months. Every trumpet player I know would say, check this out, check it out. So it went viral all through social media. Now, so I was like, well, someday maybe I'll meet this cat. So then I go to rehearsal in Eugene, Oregon at the Oregon Festival of American Music. And you and I are playing in a big band together. And I sit down and I hear you warm up. And I was mad as soon as I heard you warm up because it was so good, you know. And I said, well, who is this cat? And then I started talking to you. I said, wait a minute. That's him. That's the cat I heard. And man, we sat in that section together. I thought I could halfway read because I used to be a good reader, you know, about a long time ago. I could read anything. So I said, I still got it a little bit. Man, you didn't miss nothing. You don't play, Tony. Yeah, it was incredible. You had solo section parts. You could play lead. You could play. It's simply amazing. So anyway, welcome to the show. And if I can start with a question for you first. We were in Columbus. Then we found out this whole coronavirus thing started. And then we had to cancel our final show or our opening concert. You got out of there. What happened to you after that, after you left?
So I think you and I were in the what is it called? The Southern Theater, right?
Yes.
And
yes.
we were talking, just you and me and I, and we were talking about how we were going to get through the weekend and how everything was canceled. And then my sister calls me on the phone, and she works for a CAA, Creative Arts Agency, in Los Angeles. And she calls me and says, "Hey, I don't know if you've seen this, but there's something that just got published about Ohio having thousands of cases. And I know you're in Ohio. Are you okay?" And I got off the phone and I told you that. And I said, "Yeah, this is really bad." So the next day on Sunday, I flew back to New York, and in the plane, as we were about to take off, I'm buying a ticket to get out of New York upon landing to go out to the West Coast to hang with my parents, where out here in Portland, Oregon, there's not a lot of people that have it. So I routed myself from Columbus back to New York, went back to my apartment, changed my bags, went to a different airport. So I think I flew to LaGuardia, and then went to my apartment, and then went to JFK, and then flew all the way out to the West Coast. And that was 3 weeks ago today. And it was one of those horrible travel days, and it was really surreal to be in all these airports with so many people wearing masks and people running around. I remember it was funny and also kind of dark in a way, seeing a little kid sneeze and have everybody in the whole airport go like that, like you were in like a simulation or some freaky movie, right? So it was that kind of energy in the airport. I'm sure anybody that's traveled in the last few weeks has found that.
Wow.
But man, yeah, I'm just happy to have gotten out, and you know.
We're glad you got out safely too. It is safe too. We are quarantined. We don't, I go exercise once a day for, about an hour. I go for my walk and, try to do stuff inside. So that's the only time we're really out and about. My wife and I will sit outside in our driveway, but it's like so weird because if I'm walking and people come towards me, I like go to the other side of the street and everybody keeps their thing. But let me just quickly ask you, you're in Portland. What's the vibe like then?
Well, out here, it's not as strict as like in Italy or Spain, of course. And it's not as strict.
So you don't have a quarantine order from your governor or anything? There is
a quarantine order, and everything is closed down, but it's not as strict. They might fine you if you're outside. So, you're still supposed to keep 6 feet. You're supposed to wear a mask if you can. You're not supposed to mingle with people that aren't in your same household. So it's been okay. We're able to take walks. But again, that's other countries are not even able to go outside unless they have a dog, actually.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like that bad. So it's not the worst.
Yeah. I know in Italy that they actually, they have a certain number of people that can go. You have to get permission to go to the policeman lets you go to the store. Like if you come out and say, "Hey, I want to go to the store." Okay. And I think, sometimes they'll guide you there, and then it's only, 5 or 6 people in the store at a time. And so it's pretty strict. So I saw that YouTube video of you, and then all of a sudden you become this star, and then I started seeing you all over YouTube. I have to tell you, like my friend Bria Skomberg. Do you know Bria?
Yeah, no, we don't. I wish we really knew each other, but maybe we live in the same city and do something similar. So maybe someday we'll be able to play a show.
Well, you and her are on cutting edge of social media. You guys know how to do it, and you do it well. And I just want to let our audience know that if you fall in love with Tony, which many people do, we want you to just know he's available on social media, and you can take him home with you on social media on your computer.
That's right.
But Instagram, that's right. You're on Instagram. Are you on Facebook?
Yeah, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. And I have albums on Spotify and Apple Music and all that. So
yeah, and you also produce your own albums too. Like
That's right. And I've been producing, records for other people too. And that's something that I just love. I just love making music. You just put me anywhere and I'm in a musical situation. I'm happy,
Right, right. So was your idea in terms of social media, was that intentional? Was that, or you just say, I want to, like you said, I want to make music, or did you say, I want to figure out how to do my social media profile? Because I've never done that.
The music was first. So what happened was, a year before I made that video that went viral on Facebook, I had started to put together a record. So I made my first record when I was 20, or I think I had just turned 20 or something like that.
How old are you now?
25. So this is 5 years ago. And this is 5 years ago. I put all these tunes that I'd written together. It was 10 compositions, got bands together. We recorded. And with that, I had video footage from the studio sessions that we did. And that was actually the first content I really put out on YouTube. I think I'd put out really simple little audio files or videos from live gigs that I later took down because they were just crummy videos or whatever. I never really had anything legitimate on YouTube. So it was in 2015 that I put out this video of a song called Something to Be Remembered For. And that's the first track on the first album that I made. And people loved it. I was super happy with the reception because people clicked on it, watched it, shared it, whatever, and it took off. And I thought, this is kind of cool. I had just one more video come out from that album. And then in 2016, so that was at the end of 2015. In 2016, I had a couple people say, like, man, you should utilize, I didn't even have a Facebook page. Like, I had a personal page. I didn't have an artist page. I had an Instagram account with like 5 pictures of like cats, like I didn't have anything. And people said, man, you already have an album, you're playing shows. Why don't you have your social media game together? And I was just clueless. I didn't really know what that was about. I didn't even understand how YouTube works with algorithms or anything. Right. And not to say that I do now. I think I have just learned over the years through observation kind of what works and, through talking to people. But it was really 2016 in the beginning of the year when I started to just post. And that's what I tell people. They say, well, how did you do it? What did you do? I said, nothing. I didn't buy followers. I didn't pay for ads or what. It was like, you just post. And I would just picture of me at the gig, picture of the band, a picture of my trumpet, a video of me practicing something. And 8 months later, I think it was in August, when I just one day, I had that like a military haircut. It was a hot, sweaty day. I was in California at the moment. And I was just practicing over You Are My Sunshine. I was like, man, I'm having a lot of fun on this. And I just flipped on the camera, which at that point had become sort of regular for me to just film sort of something at the end of my practice if I had been, shedding something in particular. And I put it on Facebook thinking nothing of it. And next thing I know, I look on 2 hours later and I'm like, hang on a second, this video has like 30,000 views or something. I was like, how did this even happen? I didn't understand. But that's how the internet works. That's why it's called viral. It's like a virus, no pun intended. I mean, woof.
Yeah.
This stuff just travels like that. People share it, they shake hands, whatever. So on the internet, people would just say, hey, check this out. And it got shared thousands of times. And that's when I first understood, I guess, the power of the internet and the power of those social media platforms for helping an artist who in real life is doing real things, playing shows and making, physical albums, but putting that online for people to see is, I wouldn't say a substitution, but just a great, another great way to get your music out there because it's so easy to share. So that's when I saw that with that video and wow, this is cool. And then I started putting out more videos that were more like those studio sessions that I had talked about with my first record. So I would go back into the studio, just record some standards with my friends. And then I kept writing music and kept putting out albums. And here we are 4 or 5 years later. And, it just grows slowly. I think those competitions really helped too. So going out and, playing in front of, heavy judges that would give you first prize. And I mean, that was huge. That was huge for me. Those were huge honors. And I think that the attention that those competitions have, especially globally with trumpet players from all over the, all corners of the earth kind of looking, oh, this person won. I think those competitions sort of helped bring people to my online presence. Cause that's the thing, is like, if these people live in Australia and heard that I won a competition and there's nowhere to find my music, they don't get that chance to connect. Right. So it all kind of clicked at the same time. I was like, okay, this is a game, and it really feels like a game. It's like a game that needs to be played at the same time as this analog real world musician stuff. So that's my 2 cents on social media.
That's great stuff. In fact, well, two things. I think, you know, when I work with people students, I tell them to go look at your videos, because the thing that can be dangerous, I would think, is to post something that sucks. Honestly.
Sure.
And the great thing is that all of your stuff, and you control the quality of the stuff that you put out. You can't control if you put a bad course on giant steps at a nightclub somewhere in the, you know, at 2 a.m, but you can control your own stuff, and you do that well. And in that spirit, I was wondering if Alexa could just play. We've got about 3 minutes of one of your recent ones, if you wouldn't mind, if we could play. I think it's Another You. Alexa, if we could get that going. That's sweet. That is so sweet, man. And so I got to talk. Go.
The question is, I didn't really think of this till now. That it's how many grace notes did I play in there?
Oh, come on. Nobody's thinking about that but you. I just know it sounds good and it feels good. You know,
it's a good time. That's a good band, man. Whew.
Yeah. Let me quickly ask you, can you tell us about the early years? I know that there were some musical influences in your family, and we're just trying to find out what brought you and what got you to that, because we know that all the, you know, the influences in a person, you know, I think it's a Buddhist statement that says, I'm a part of all that I've come in contact with. And certainly in those early years, particularly with your family, must have been pivotal for you. Can you talk about those early years for you?
Yeah. You know, you are what you eat. And that's true for the music. So it's like, for me, I grew up in a musical family. I'm the second of 6 kids. So
oh my goodness.
That's a big family. 2 parents.
I could have helped with that if you would have called me.
So, and we had a grand piano in our house, which was a gift from my grandmother, my mom's mom. And my mom is a lifelong pianist, and she was teaching lessons. And my dad dabbles in piano. He also sings. He grew up playing the drum set. So musical parents. All four of my grandparents were actually professional musicians at one time or another. So everything from, choir director, organist. My grandfather, I have his cornet somewhere laying
No
around.
way.
He used to really play like in big bands and everything way back in the day. And then another grandfather put himself through college for years just playing the drums. And this was in Portland. So yeah, professional musicians all over. I have cousins, and this is what got me into the trumpet. So I grew up playing piano, and I would sit for hours a day and just kind of mess around. But I really wanted to play the trumpet because I had a cousin who played, and this cousin and another cousin of mine would play these trumpet saxophone duets from a really cheesy book. I don't even remember what it's called, but we thought it was the coolest thing. My older sister and me thought they were super cool. And so she was playing the saxophone starting around age 9 or 10. And I would have been 7 at the time. And that's about when I wanted to start the trumpet. My parents said, let's wait a little bigger. So when I was 10, I started to play. And I took to it immediately. Like, it just became my voice. Not that at 10 years old, you know what your voice is or whatever, but growing up playing the piano, I mean, I don't know if you ever took piano lessons, but it's hard. The piano is super frustrating. It's super frustrating. But so as soon as I started playing the trumpet, that was it. That's not to say that I didn't keep playing the piano. I did. And I actually in later years started taking really serious, like, professional lessons from some instructors. We were living in the Bay Area, California at the time, and everybody around there was like deep into piano and cello.
Really?
Yeah, there's a huge Asian American population down in the Bay, as you may or may not know. And we were living in a community where, like, these kids were just playing like stuff that, I mean, they were just ridiculous. Like, age 12,
but they were doing Suzuki, right, from the very beginning.
Oh yeah. So I showed up and I was like, yeah, I play piano. And it's like, yeah, no, you don't. So I was like, I think I want to get really good at this, actually. So I got more into piano, and then through piano studies and trumpet studies, I actually had theory training too. And that kind of got my composition thing flowing. So I started writing, and then I thought it was cool. Like, when I was 15 and 16, I started being kind of like the singing piano player guy. And I thought that was kind of cool. The girls like that. And then I went to college, and of all the, musical things that I could do and love to do, the trumpet was the one that stood out, and it had always got me in the door and helped me, meet new people and kind of pave the way for myself. So that was the obvious choice as far as focus goes. And that's, the rest is history. I kind of just went deep with the trumpet. And as far as improvisation goes, that was actually a later addition too. I didn't really start to focus on that until I was 16 or 17. I was always playing classical music. I would write music, but it was kind of in it was in like a pop sort of classical vein, if you know what I mean, especially on the piano. And what got me into improvising was really just friends. They just turned me on to records that were great. And I was like, you know what, I hear this now. And I think that's the barrier for a lot of young people. I think what gets them finally into it is when they can understand something about the music. I think it was always a little bit too abstract for me. My sister used to transcribe Charlie Parker solos, and I didn't like the sound of it, as a little kid, I was just like, that just sounds like noise. Like the music I would always rather listen to was like Aretha Franklin or Stevie Wonder. I used to just sit on my bed and just lay there and listen to Fulfilling This First Finale, like the whole record, just front to back, like over and over again. And that was, of course, I didn't grow up with records, but I grew up with a CD player and CDs, which is like, that's significant, because I would have to, take the CD out and put it in. You can still skip tracks, but it's like, I always wanted to listen to the album, front to back. And I would just sit there. I remember playing with Legos for hours and just listening to that one album over and over again. But I'm a huge Stevie head. So that, I think that more than anything is what got me really serious about music, to be honest. Yeah. A lot of those mid 70s records really, really hooked me. Yeah.
Wow. Can you then, keep going in that directions, could you give us like a short list of your influences, the musicians, and start with jazz first, the jazz musicians that really influenced you the most as you were coming up?
Yeah. The first jazz record that was ever given to me was Kind of Blue, Miles Davis. And I have an uncle on my dad's side who's super into music, and he was like, well, if you're going to play the trumpet, this is the album you got to have. And so he gave
Quick question: was jazz ever a barrier for you? Because some people, they first hear it and they go, not for me, and it takes them a second to get to it?
It wasn't a barrier as far as liking it. It was just a barrier as far as understanding it, you know? So I actually did grow up listening to, we had this one Glenn Miller album, like always playing in the car. Because that was also back in the day when you could fit like 6 CDs. I don't know. You ever have one of these cars where you put like 6 CDs in the back of the car? You ever had one of those?
Tony, we had 8-track tapes, which you never heard of.
No,
we
of
would
course.
carry boxes of them in the car and put in, you know, and then we've got like,
we had this little thing in the back of the car where you had to load in the CDs ahead of time. So you could just cycle through like 6 CDs anyway. So one of them was always this Glenn Miller album. And we loved that. You know, there were all these famous trumpet solos on like St. Louis Blues and all that.
Right. What about the solo on String of Pearls? Did you like the String of Pearls solo?
Wait a second. Is that isn't?
Is that Glenn Miller? See, I got my big man.
Yeah, that's
so that's
Glenn Miller. Is
that Bobby Hackett or somebody? Somebody will tell us who it is. You know,
that might. Somebody somebody's got to help us out in the comments.
Yes. Please let us know who that was.
Give us the answers.
But I always loved that solo.
That album for sure. I mean, that's like we probably heard that 1,000 times. Also, the other CDs that were in the car, if I remember right, we had this CD of like Irish music. But two of my sisters were into Irish dance. We have some Irish heritage. I don't know if that's why they started doing Irish dance, but we'd have this amazing like jig thing like going at all hours in the car. We used to do a lot of road trips and whatnot. So you know, various things. Jazz wasn't an unattractive music. There wasn't a barrier getting into the sound. It was more just I didn't get what was going on. And that's why I say it was later when I listened to more. I don't know what it is about that, but it's just too complex, I think, for a young person who's just figuring out how to play like scales on the horn, and you hear all this Donna Lee, you're not going to understand what that is.
But did you have trouble with camaraderie with friendships in regard to music? I mean, was it like, you know, your friends are like, what the heck are you listening to, man? Come on and get with this other stuff.
Yeah, maybe not that I recall, because I think, you know, if I might say so, I think I had hip friends. I don't know. I think they were hip. I think that they you know, they had good taste in music, and that's probably why we were friends. I mean, we listened to. I mean, I listened to all kinds of music. Really, I liked Led Zeppelin a lot. I know you were reading that earlier. You know, I like whatever.
We just got a comment. It's from Bill Allman, and he said that it was Bobby Hackett playing the solo on String of Pearls. And so I win tonight. I get the Mercedes. Thank you, Bill, for that comment.
So I don't know, where were we? Yeah, I mean, really, I listened to a lot of music. I was like any kid. I liked what my parents liked, and my parents, I think, have great taste in music. They liked all those really nice, like R&B records and all those artists from, you know, I mean, there was this Aretha Franklin album too. It was like the Stevie thing. I listened to that all day long.
Do you remember which one?
Day. I don't even remember. It was whatever had Natural Woman on it. Whatever that record is.
It might have been a greatest hits, because my parents listened to an Aretha album that was killing live at the Fillmore. Okay. I realized 20 years later that the bass was so out of tune, but that's the only way. That's the only way I want to hear that record. I don't want to hear the bass in tune. You know.
I know. Yeah.
It was so funky and so flat, that bass, but it was killing, and the spirit on that album is incredible. You know.
Yeah.
There's some specific trumpet influences that you could name, and if you think you could possibly, I'm going to push you here, name them kind of in order of your preference, like, or start at the bottom if you want. Who's your top guy, and who's the guy that's, you know, number 5, or, you know, whatever, however order you want.
I think from the very beginning, it was this, you know, it was Byron Stripling. Like when I first heard,
preach, you know, baby. Yes. Preach.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, like I said, I got into Miles first, and that took a few years. I think the next guy that really hit was Chet Baker. And I think the reason why people usually start with those guys is because you can find records where their solos are relatable and simple, right? Kind of Blue, great example. Tons of Chet Baker records they're just simple enough that somebody who doesn't know a lot can understand and kind of get into it, and just the nice sound and the relaxed way he plays. So I think those were my first two guys. And then once I fell for it, I just went, it was like Freddie Hubbard and Lee Morgan, Clifford Brown, Dizzy, of course. I mean, I would always hear Dizzy on the Bird records my sister would listen to.
Your sister listened to Bird?
Yeah, because she had a hip teacher who was getting her to transcribe. She would just shed like ornithology, for hours. Like,
you got a hip sister, man.
It was, yeah. She was cool. She was cool.
Was that the one
the one? Yes.
That you were talking to? Is that the sister you're closest to? Are you?
Probably, yeah. She and I actually shared a room for a year. My family kind of moved a lot, and so we'd land in various houses. And there was a year where I was a freshman in high school and she was a senior, and we had like the same schedule. So we were like bunkmates. It was like we had these twin beds, and it was like we'd wake up at 6 a.m. together and like go to jazz band or whatever. But so we're later I got into. I mean, going to college and studying full time was really what got me like deep into all kinds of people that I'd never heard of before. But I mean, amongst those players that I think I really fell in love with, of course, is to this day my favorite player, Louis Armstrong. I mean, I can't really get over. Maybe we can talk about him more later, but I just over and over, time and time again, I come back and I'm like, there was nobody greater than this. I just don't think even to this day there was anybody that played the horn like he did, and that could take solos with that kind of melody and that kind of feel. So I mean, of course, Louis Armstrong, like I said, Clifford Brown. I had a huge Booker Little phase, but I love Kenny Dorham. I love Blue Mitchell. I love Red Rodney. I mean, man, I had like a Tom Harrell phase. I was into kind of some of this stuff in the 70s and 80s, with Woody Shaw and whatnot. And then of course Wynton. I mean, it's like Wynton was somebody that I'd heard when I first started playing. Because I'll never forget this. Somebody in my 6th grade class had written in my yearbook. They were in my band class. It was a trumpet player friend. I think she'd written like, have a great summer. Hags. People used to write that. Have a great summer. Like, you're going to be the next Wynton Marsalis. And I remember reading that, and I went home and I said to my mom, I said, "Who's Wynton Marsalis?" And she said, "Oh, he's a really famous trumpet player. He's really great." And I don't even know if I like even checked anything out at that age, but somewhere in there, I realized he was, one of the greatest, if not the greatest. And
since then, have you gotten to meet and get to know Wynton?
Yeah, I had this amazing opportunity I think it was in 2016 when I had won a grant called the Laurie Frink Grant. So in honor of Laurie, who was a student of Carmine and everybody, and she was such a like chop doctor for so many people, and such a like therapist almost for all these brass players, and such an important figure for so many people. Did you study with Laurie at one point?
I studied with Laurie's teacher. I studied with Carmine Caruso.
With Carmine, yeah. So after that, there was like an allotment of money that could go towards education, go towards record production. So I used it to make some records, to invest in some recording equipment, to help with some of the YouTube endeavors. I went and bought some microphones and things like that. And then I used part of it to just pay for a trip to go to New York, which was, I think, the second or third time I'd been. I used to go for a week or 2 weeks or even a month and just hang.
Where would you stay?
I would stay with a friend of mine, the one who got me into all those records back in high school. And we in Brooklyn, in Bushwick. So I'd stay there and I would just go out at night and check things out. And I got in contact with Wynton and I gave him a call and he said, come by. This is my address, which is super weird. I mean, that's like a surreal moment. It's like, here's Wynton giving me his address. This is crazy. And then I like hung with him for like 3 days straight. It was really special, and just got to ask all kinds of questions and toss the football.
You guys practice together?
Practice, play chess. I got to meet all of his kids, and it was interesting. It was really a beautiful little thing. And just being able to ask questions, and I was always surprised with the answers being, how he's just very wise and kind of simple in a lot of ways, So some of his answers, I would say this or that about the trumpet. He doesn't really like to talk trumpet, and I get why. It's so many of his answers are he would say, I'd say, do you warm up? What do you do to warm up? And he'd say, lip slurs, scales, and I I wasn't even bothered by that. I mean, I understood it. I was like, I mean, of course, what is he going to say? Like, yeah, I have this steady routine. I think at one point he probably had a super steady routine. But this stage in you know, for him, it's well, he doesn't have the time to practice like that. So his answers were very concise and very to the point. And just amazing lessons.
I just want to move things on a little bit because we're starting to run out of time just a little bit. We got 5-10 more minutes. I just want to know, so we've talked about music a lot. Are there any books that you read, you know, were you a reader when you came up? I just gave I always try to give a couple book recommendations when I talk to people.
I was just saying the other day, you know, I've had this extra time here just in my parents' house to just chat with my parents and whatever, just kind of reflect on life. It's like, I don't get this opportunity. I'm kind of grateful for this, you know, in a way. It's you know, just selfishly, it's like it's nice to be able to take a step back and reflect and like be at home and just almost hit the reset button. And one of the things that I've been thinking about is how privileged I was, how lucky I was to grow up with, like I said, hip parents, like a hip family, parents that spoke other languages and read books and listened to music and my mom was a humanities major, so she was a huge reader, and my dad like majored in French. I believe he was teaching French at one point, living in France for a few years, and they've always been just super deep into books and all of that stuff. And so one of the you know, blessings I had growing up was growing up in a family of readers. And I remember we were just talking about this the other day in my family, like having my kindergarten teacher over for dinner one night, and I was reading her a book. It was like a thing. My parents were like, you should read her a book. It's really cool that you can read. And so I was like reading her this Dr. Seuss thing. And so I don't know, maybe Dr. Seuss is deep in there somewhere. But yeah, I think the books, I mean, you know, I read Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings and all that stuff like everybody else. But I think some of the more serious books that I got into in middle school and high school, some of the books that people kind of dread reading, you know, like even A Separate Peace. Yeah. I love that. I love that book. I think, you know, To Kill a Mockingbird. I mean, a lot of those like epic, you know, we read a lot of Shakespeare. So those things all had a huge impression on me. And then in college, I took philosophy classes. And one of the books I read was called One Dimensional Man by Herbert Marcuse. And he's like a mid 20th century man. I mean, he has all kinds of, you know, theories and books and whatever. But that book inspired me so much that I wrote a whole record called One Dimensional Man. Wow. All inspired by that.
Can you tell us his name again and spell it out if you can spell it?
Herbert
in the last name.
And Marcuse, Marcuse.
Okay. And I'm going to write it down. You have to do it one more time because I'm slow. Herbert. And
Marcuse. Marcuse. And what was so cool about that book and the teacher I had was, it was the first time that I felt like I was reading something that I just agreed with, like every line, everything. I was like, man, somebody's just eloquently putting these feelings and thoughts that I have like into text. This is so weird. This is amazing. The way he's able to dissect kind of this concept of unfreedom he talks about, where all these things in society are telling us how to be and what to choose, and we feel that we're free, but those things are actually making us unfree. That's just the tip of the iceberg. The book is super. It's remarkable. So
is it heavy, Tony, or is it easy reading?
It's heavy. It's not. Yeah. It's like, you know, it's thick. It's really thick. It's like thicker. I mean, it's the kind of thing where you read a sentence and you might want to reread it so that you can ponder it. But I love that. It's like a really, you know, it's like a stinky cheese. It's like, it's really, it's cool. It's definitely worth, you know, taking a bite of and seeing.
Yeah. One of the things I told our audience as we kind of wind things down here when we first started was that there's, you know, I think art is one of the most powerful things for us, and it has the power to change people's lives. For you, has there been any musical experiences that were really important for you that stirred you, or maybe in some cases saved you? Just the power of that music. I mean, music for me has gotten me through breakups with girlfriends. It's gotten me through rejection. It's gotten me through the good times too. If there's something good out there, then music blows that up even more for me and sets my soul on fire. And that's why I said, one of the most powerful things in the earth is the human soul on fire. And to me, what ignites that fire is music. So for you, how's music been? Is there anything like that for you musically?
Absolutely. I think music has always been what I turn to when anything isn't right. And so the funny part about that is the more I go about trying to solve problems, and the happier I might get, the freer I might feel. Honestly, the less inspired I am.
Wow.
When it comes to music. Like I don't always want to practice or write if I'm feeling good. And I've talked to a lot of people who feel the same way. And I think that's part of the reason why a lot of artists can seem to have like very difficult lives. I think sometimes people with difficult lives turn to art, but sometimes art, if you don't start making art with a difficult life, it can almost, you start to notice that you need something. Like it's like you're becoming attracted to like despair and destruction almost. It's the weirdest thing. And I'm not, maybe we don't have to talk about that necessarily, but I've seen that, go back and forth in myself in the last like 10 years, I guess, since I've been a professional musician or somewhat professional. And so what I'll say about this is I have had a couple experiences. I mean, I remember being 14 and being I was the principal trumpet player of the California Wind Ensemble. Mallory Thompson from Northwestern was and she used to play, right? Yeah. She was the conductor. I think I had braces. I was like 5 feet tall, and it was the weirdest thing. Somehow, my audition went well, and I was like the principal trumpet player of this wind symphony, and it was the coolest experience. And I remember, I think Mallory's father had just passed away very recently, and we were playing an Eric Whitacre piece. I think it was Sleep, one of his just epic arrangements for wind ensemble. And we were in the middle of the piece, not in the concert, in a rehearsal, and she was just bawling, just wow. Crying. And then it made all of us want to cry. And we were like, what's happening here? We're all like 14 years old. We don't know how to process this. And it was this really weird and beautiful, reverent moment. She didn't even explain it. It was later that we heard from some of the other band directors in the room, like, yeah, I guess her father just died. And so that was just kind of hitting her. And anyway, like I've had moments like that, and I would have moments in church. I used to play church organ. I'd have moments in church where I was having the worst week, show up, play the organ in front of all these people. I would do this crazy reharm introduction with all the stops out kind of a thing, and just like rip on the last like hymn of the session. And like, I would be sitting up there crying myself. Like, I don't know what is happening right now, but the music is just like killing me, like in the best way. And people would come up afterwards, like crying, thank you for this. And it's those experiences, I haven't had those quite as much as a jazz trumpet player. I think those things come more when, I sit down at the piano and play a ballad I wrote, or maybe play a ballad on the horn. It's kind of that more expressive, the stuff with either a triumphant kind of sentiment or something with a sort of darker sentiment. It's usually that music when I'm really feeling it, and I put my heart into whatever it is that I'm feeling, and it comes out. And that's when I think that people come up and say, that hit me, thank you for that. But yeah, I always love those moments, and I look forward to those moments. And like I said, the weird thing is, as an adult trying to work through whatever problems you're working through, the more I solve certain issues, the less that feeling is there. And that's something that's kind of something uncomfortable. I don't know if you have, a word to say about that, but it's like the more pacified and sort of like tranquil that the more peace that I feel, the less that grit comes out of the music. And I miss that when it's not there. I miss that in those happy moments of life.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, you've had some even little hard times in your life. I think when I first met you, you were still married.
Yeah.
And, you went through that, and did music help you through, maybe a transition in that area?
Yeah. And I know all the people that are out there like, wait a second, this guy's 25. It's like, that's a freaky thing to hear, I'm sure. But yeah, like, so growing up in a religious family, I mean, everybody in my family over the last 7 years has stepped away completely from religion, for a variety of reasons, but just it doesn't resonate with anybody anymore. And so my wife at the time we got married when we were 20. That's the very common thing to do, you know, in the faith culture, in Christian culture. And it was hard because it's hard being young and being in a very like serious relationship like that. And in those hard times, there was a song I wrote called "There Is Always Hope," and I think that's definitely something I would ask people to check out. It was a song that I wrote kind of the day that the bombings in Paris happened back in 2015. Wow. But the reason I was and I was just very shook. I wrote the song, called a friend up, recorded it, put out a video the next day. It was just one of those crazy little 24-hour turnaround projects. But the reason I was able to write that song was because of what I was feeling deep down inside, which was a place of, I mean, I just was feeling very hopeless. It was just a really rough time in life. I was a master's student. I was trying to be married. I was working full time as a touring and recording musician. And I mean, that's just in and of it, those three things are enough to make somebody fall apart. So it was a really hard time. And absolutely, music for me has been the thing that got me through, whether that's writing and performing or just listening. Like I said, growing up and just laying on the bed and listening to Stevie Wonder, I would have hours on end during those hard months and years where I would just put on albums like Kendrick Lamar released "To Pimp a Butterfly," and that record for me really changed my life. And I don't know exactly how to get into that briefly, but I just started listening to that album 2 or 3 times a day, and it's like an hour and a half record, right? So I just put that on and listened to it over and over again. There was something about the feeling of that music that just made it felt like empathy, you know, it felt like therapy. It felt like somebody.
What's the name of the album again?
That's called "To Pimp a Butterfly," and that's from 2015. And that's not light. Listen, that's like Marcuse. I guess I like the really tough stuff. that's not light. That's not easy listening. It's heavy and it's very serious music. And really it has a lot. It has almost everything to do with race and almost nothing to do with, like, you know, relationship trauma or the struggles of being a young person or whatever the things, or religion or anything that I was going through. But something about like hearing Kendrick just, I mean, really, I'm not going to even do it justice by trying to.
I'm going to pick up that. Yes. See, because I'm a little deficient. And as you know, my daughter, Juliet, she'll tell you in a minute, she'll tell you that I'm deficient in the pop music and all other types of music. If it ain't Kenny Dorham, I kind of get nervous. I don't know what, but I'm open to anything, especially Stevie Wonder and Aretha Franklin. And I know.
Well, hey, coming from a Stevie and Aretha fan, I would say like this music is weird, and weirdly enough, very much so in line with that sound and the vibe and the meaning of the music, you know. I mean, whether it was said in the lyrics or not, like all of that music was civil rights music, you know what I mean? Yes, absolutely. And so like here, "To Pimp a Butterfly" is the same thing, just 50 years later, and with a modern, I mean, and the coolest thing is all these guys in LA, all like these jazz musicians, studio musicians, right? Terrace Martin, Kamasi Washington, you know, all these guys are on, Robert Glasper, they're all on, they're on that record. They're on the record. Like, so you have this, like, the second track, for example, is this fast swing. It's this minor blues, and Kendrick's like rapping over it. And it's the coolest thing. So for whatever reason, that record hit me at the right time, you know, just going back to the hard times in life. And I think music for me has almost always come in at the right time. I seem to find, whether it's a friend or a family member or somewhere on the internet, I usually in a dark time, like I somehow find like a new thing to get in, whether it's a new artist or new album or a new almost like genre of music. I feel like you can just get you through those times. And then I'm a listener too, so I don't find something and then move on. I find something to listen to 1,000 times. And then
right. Well, look, I think you find that music because they tell us that when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And I think that you, knowing your ears, you're always ready. And the first thing that I saw you do when you came to rehearse with us is you sat down with Bobby Floyd, and you guys were working on some new changes on "You Are My Sunshine," and you started jamming with Dwight Adams, our trumpet player, who you know Dwight plays with Stevie Wonder.
That's
So I
my
don't know if you
man.
got to talk to him about. He's a
Yeah.
beautiful
Yeah.
cat. And so this conversation leads me to say one thing to you. We have to do this again. And we know that all good things must come to an end, because this wasn't enough time, though. And so with a promise and a pledge for you that you'll join us once again. And our goal is to try to get you back to Columbus so we can fulfill the promise of that concert that you and I and Finkel were going to do. We have to wait till things get straightened out. If you don't mind, I just want to mention one more time to our audience that there's a link on our, the emergency jazz fund. There's a link in the description of the video. And I think you can view this video again. We'll post it up on Facebook, so anybody who wants to see it again. And there'll be a link in that. But I think it's jazzemergencyfund.com. And there you can help the Columbus Jazz Orchestra. Again, we're all about legacy, and we realize the responsibility of upholding this great tradition of jazz that was started over 40 some years ago. And we're going to do it in a great way. And the way we do it is through people like you, Tony. You are simply a fantastic musician, an amazing trumpet player. When you started playing your first, I have to look at my band and get their approval. And when you played the first song in rehearsal, everybody was on your tip. They're like, okay, all right. And then everybody starts sitting up in their chair, because, cats will sleep on you in a second, They will sleep on you, but nobody was sleeping on you. You were simply spectacular. And I want our audience to, can you please remind us where we can get your music and where we can see your videos and how to join you on social media?
Sure. So you can find me just under my full name, Tony. Last name is Glausi. I think that'll show up somewhere around here. But you search that anywhere: Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music. You'll find albums, videos. I'm working on. I just released. So There Will Never Be Another You came from a new little EP, just 5 songs, just standards. I call it My Favorite Tunes, and that came out just a few weeks ago, actually. But I've been working for several years now. Huge album, like 17 or 18 tracks, a huge production, all original music. Hopefully that'll be out this year, pending the virus, but keep your eyes and ears out, because tons of music. I mean, that's really what I love to do, is just write and produce original music. And that's what I'm most excited about for the coming months is getting the ball rolling and releasing that. So
well, we have to go, but what a joy, an honor, and a privilege to sit here and talk with you for just a few minutes. And,
hey, the privilege is mine. I think, hey, look, I'm going to say something. I know everybody in your circle, everybody watching knows how much of a badass you are. But the thing is, every time I bring you up to somebody in the jazz world, first of all, it's amazing that they all know you. That's amazing. That's just impressive in and of itself. The other thing is that I've never heard a bad thing said about you. You know what I mean? Everybody is just, oh, Byron, I love Byron. Man, that guy can play. Man, he's the nicest, So the privilege is mine. The honor is mine. It's nice to know you.
Tony,
nice to know you.
Again, a joy and a privilege. You are one of the young heavies. We want our audience to buy your music. Go out, iTunes, Spotify, all that. Check out Tony's music. Check him out on social media. We love everybody. Please go to jazzemergencyfund.com or whatever it is. Look on the link. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Tony Glausi, and we will see him soon, and we will see my audience next week. We love everybody. Have a good night.